Hi, welcome back to The Retail Lawyer. As you could probably tell based on the scenery and my clothing that I'm shooting a few of these videos on the same day. We're just getting started. There's a lot of topics to cover. And there's a few that I wanted to kind of get the ball running with the channel so that people can deal with timely and necessary information. So the last video talked about OSHA. And what I want to talk about right now are I-9s, right? So you've just spent the last few weeks more than likely laying people off and going through the process, unfortunately, of putting people on furlough and dealing with WARN notices possibly, and meeting the compliance on that end of what you need to do. If you're doing salary reductions, and you're in New York State anyway, not all states, but some states require you to put all of that in writing as well. So I hope you did. If you didn't, talk to your HR person, talk to your lawyer. And basically what you want to use for that is the wage theft notice form about the reduction of salary. Something with that kind of information in it to protect yourselves. But that's not what this is about today. What this is about today in this segment is about I-9s and completing I-9s remotely. Now, regularly speaking, people have remote employees, and the way that an I-9 is handled in those circumstances and is allowed under law is that a company can nominate a third party, such as a notary or an attorney, to serve in the stead of the business, look at the documentation, and fill out the form with the employee in front of them. Obviously, because of quarantining and isolation, that's not possible right now. So what the Department of Homeland Security has come out with, and they issued an order of this, I think it's March 20th, it is basically the protocols and had to do this truly remotely on a temporary basis. This is purely temporary. It is only for the purposes of the pandemic and the isolation that we're all experiencing right now. And so what the rule is for now, for these purposes, and it only applies to workplaces that do not have employees working at the work site. So if you're a grocery store, I'm sorry, this is not going to work for you. If you're a pharmacy, not going to work for you, just so you know, okay? And so on. But if you're an office, if you're a non-essential business, everybody's working remotely right now, or you have a situation where you were working regularly, but now somebody has unfortunately positive for COVID and you've had to close the office temporarily or the business temporarily because of that COVID illness, and now a quarantine's kicked in, then you can use these standards. So what's basically happening is that the employer is going to, through email basically, is going to ask the employee to send over the documents that are required under the I-9. The driver's license, passport, social security card, green card, whatever it is. And we all know what the form is, and you choose 2 or 3 out of the list, that kind of thing. I'm assuming if you're watching this, you've worked with an I-9 before. And if you haven't, just pull up the form. It's available at the Department of Homeland Security. You put it in Google at I-9, and the form will come up with the instructions and walk you through it. But what this is really talking about is the remote process. So the employer is going to get these documents. They're going to obtain them, inspect them, and retain copies for now. Usually you don't retain copies, and that's the difference, right? Because you're thinking about HIPAA, wait a second, I'm not supposed to obtain anything because of personal information. In this instance, for the time being, you are to retain copies until you're able to finalize the process, okay? So what's going to happen is you're going to get the documents, you're going to look at them, and this happens still within the 3 days of the employee starting work. You're going to fill out the form to the best of your ability, right? The employee is going to fill out what they can. They're going to sign it. They're going to email it to you with the documents, hopefully. You're going to look at the documents. You're going to fill out the form to the best of your ability based on the documents. And then you're going to write in there in section 2, COVID-19 delay. Simple, right? Then when you resume normal operations, so if you're one of these ones that you're just on quarantine because you're doing a deep cleaning because somebody was sick, when you resume normal operations within 3 days, that employee needs to report to the supervisor and the appropriate party and complete the process with the original documents. If it's a matter of that you're fully on quarantine and you really are working remotely, when you resume normal operations, whether that is either, and there's a time frame on this, 60 days from the date of the order, so that goes into the end of May, or 3 days after the national emergency, as evidenced by all the national emergency statements by the government, has been lifted. And it's not the later of, it's the earlier of. And so if it's 60 days is earlier, so if May 20th is earlier, then they need to renew this order, or we need to get the paperwork. And then here's the other thing, because nothing's ever easy. If you're going to take advantage of this process and doing the remote temporary process for your I-9, you need to make sure and work with your HR team or your CFO or COO, or if you're the business owner who wears every hat, you are going to be putting together an employee remote onboarding policy that needs to be part of this. And you need to have a teleworking policy of how employees work remotely. They don't have to be overly complicated. You just need to very commonsensically write out the steps and put it in a piece of paper, date it, sign it, put it in the file, and that's your process. It needs to be available if a government employee wants to see it. So if the Department of Homeland Security reaches out to you because they're doing spot checks and you have those forms, you send it on in and they say, okay, good, you have the policy. And you know what, that's going to help you anyway, because then as you're onboarding employees and as employees are working remotely, you give them a policy and everybody knows what their rights and obligations are, what the expectations are, and that's going to make for an easier process overall anyway. So as I've mentioned before, with the other video with OSHA, I had that one-page fact sheet. I have one here for this I-9 also. So it details step-by-step what you need to do. So if you'd like a copy of this, again, you can send me a message through LinkedIn at The Retail Lawyer, or you can send me an email through Gmail at laurabrandtesq@gmail.com. I don't want to give my work email because I don't want to get bombarded with this stuff and have it intermingle with my work. I do have a law practice that I'm running. So, so that's some information for you to think about. As you can tell, yeah, I'm talking about retail. And here's the thing, retailers are going, well, I'm not working, but you're going to be, and you're going to have to start ramping up your business. All of those employees that you furloughed, some of those, the I-9s are going to stand, but some of those employees aren't going to come back. Something's come up or they can't come back, and you're going to be finding new employees as well as rehiring existing employees. And so you will find yourself in the instance of having to do this remote I-9 as you're getting everything ramped up. So keep it in mind. It's always good to know that you have this option, and I wish you the best of luck. And until next time, thank you.